An interesting thematic ETF for the long term that is also available in the Giro core selection is sustainable energy. A thematic ETF is riskier because it focuses on one theme, and we will see in this video that it has its pros and cons. First of all, if you search within the Giro core selection, you'll find a whole list, and you can simply search using the search bar within the Giro core selection. We actually have two ETFs for sustainable energy. The first one is the Invesco Global Clean Energy, as an example. Within the Giro core selection, you have two ETFs that can provide you with exposure to that. The first is Invesco Global Clean Energy, and the second is iShares Global Clean Energy. Basically, there are a few differences, and we're going to talk about that. Here you can also see which ticker applies within the core selection. There's a small difference in costs, but more importantly, there's a big difference in the number of positions, and especially in the distribution of those positions. Let's start with the iShares Global Clean Energy. Personally, I would prefer that one. And there are different tickers, but as you can see for the Giro core selection, there is a ticker IQQH. Now, the total costs per year are significantly higher than, for example, a global ETF, namely 0.65%. And for the Invesco Global Clean Energy, it's 0.6%. So actually, it's similar. So I think it's good to say that 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 it's good. The iShares Global Clean Energy has positions in about 100 companies. And actually, the reason why this ETF can be interesting now for 2025 and also 2026 is start building positions right now. Why? Because the PE ratio is currently 13. And for example, the S&P 500 PE ratio is above 25. That PE ratio is a valuation. If you don't know what that means, check out our other videos on getting started with investing. But it means that stocks under 15 are relatively cheaper. Of course, there are some caveats to this rule of thumb. Now, such an ETF can drop a lot. Since the all-time high in 2021, it has dropped by more than 62% to this day. And don't think that this is the ultimate buy the dip moment, because the price level is actually comparable to 2020 and also around 2015. But you can see, for example, that this ETF was already on the market in 2011, and actually from that price level in 2011, it has dropped another 40%. And it has also dropped by about 30% actually about 7 years later. So 7 years later, it would still be down 30%. So the right moment to get in, nobody knows that. But I think it's better to build positions when valuations are low rather than when they're high. So when a new hype comes along, you can take advantage of it by selling high and then buying back in low. But no one knows exactly when is the right moment to start buying back in. So monthly deposits would be relevant and very important for that very long-term holding. Because markets just move in cyclical patterns. And in this case, solar energy, wind energy, and other renewable energy companies have been hit really hard. And actually, nowadays there's an additional significant factor, and that's Trump. That will not be favorable for renewable energy, especially for America. You see the portfolio ratio, and we'll take a closer look at that in a bit. But what's also important is the ratio across the number of sectors. And here you can see that 60% of global clean energy is invested in utility companies, a bit in industry, and not much in, for example, IT or others. Now, the geographical distribution is a small part in the United States, 25% and 12% in China. China is also a market that has dropped a lot lately, but other countries like Brazil, which is obviously a less stable country, and various companies from European countries as well. Now, the Invesco Global Clean Energy looks very similar to the ICS Global Clean Energy in many ways. So it's a bit cheaper at 0.6% per year, although that's not a huge difference. But what's more important is that the number of holdings is different. First of all, the distribution across sectors is a bit different, but not shockingly so. The country exposure is indeed different, with more in the United States. For the Invesco Global Clean Energy, now that Trump has taken office for the next 4 years, I think you actually want to have fewer positions in renewable energy in the United States. So that's also an advantage for the ICA's Global Clean Energy. But of course, you have to look beyond Trump, because this is about long-term investing. What's important, however, is the difference in strategy, and we can see that reflected in the top 10 holdings. We can find a clear overview through another source. Here we see the top 10 holdings of the ICS Global Clean Energy, and you can see that certain positions are assigned larger percentages with the total. Being about 50% of the top 10, that's quite a lot. And that's also one of the reasons why I'm talking about this company. Potential and gets 8% in this ETF. That's relatively a lot. Other companies like Iberdrola also get a relatively high percentage. While with the Invesco Global Clean Energy, we see a different strategy. That's a different strategy, UX strategy. And iShares, where actually all the holdings get a maximum of 2%, but most are around 1% or even less than that. And you also see that the top 10 holdings only represent 11% or 12% weighting over the total. Now, what we're seeing with theme ETFs from mid-11 years of investing is actually that the more concentrated ETFs have the potential to outperform. That's because you actually want to have as much capital as possible in the best performing stocks. But no one really knows for sure which ones those are, and the ICS Global Clean Energy actually just lets the winners run more, and that could pay off better in the long run. But anyway, both funds have dropped a lot. And the most important thing is that although the Invesco Global Clean Energy doesn't show this on their website, we see a price to earnings ratio of around 13 for the ICS Global Clean Energy. And it will only get cheaper as the fund continues to drop. In terms of relevant, very long-term thematic ETFs, the ICGC, which falls within the core selection, is a possible option. But again, don't be blind to it because this thematic ETF is purely within the core selection. There are, of course, other interesting thematic ETFs as well, so let's talk about those too.